The ultimatum. The stellar hegemony's armada materialized at the edge of Sol system with the precision of a cosmic ballet. 2,000 vessels, each a testament to centuries of technological supremacy, arranged themselves in perfect geometric formations that would have made Earth's greatest mathematicians weep with envy. At the center of this overwhelming display floated the Dominion's Pride, flagship of the most successful conquering force in known galactic history. Commander Vextor of the Third Spiral stood motionless on his command platform, his crystalline form refracting the light from Earth's distant sun into 1,000 rainbow fragments. His species, the Cretani, had evolved from silicon-based organisms on a world where surrender meant absorption into the collective consciousness. To them, capitulation was as natural as photosynthesis was to carbon-based life forms. Analysis complete, Commander, announced navigation specialist Zeklon, her harmonious tones filling the bridge. The inhabitants call their world Earth. Technological assessment places them at level 2.3 on the galactic development scale. Military capabilities are quaint. Vextor's form pulsed with satisfaction. In 300 cycles of service, he had orchestrated the peaceful integration of 47 worlds into the hegemony. The mathematics were always the same. Overwhelming force plus rational beings equaled inevitable surrender. No species could look upon the might of the hegemony and choose extinction over integration. Initiate standard conquest protocol, Vextor commanded. Broadcast the terms of beneficial surrender on all electromagnetic frequencies. The message that reached Earth was elegant in its simplicity, translated into every major human language by the hegemony's linguistic algorithms. People of Earth, we are the stellar hegemony, guardians of galactic order and prosperity. Your isolation ends today. Our fleet of 2,000 vessels orbits your world, each capable of rendering your defensive systems inert. We offer you the honor of joining our collective as a protected member species. You will retain local governance under hegemony oversight, gain access to advanced technologies, and participate in the greater galactic community. In return, you will cease all military activities and acknowledge hegemony authority. You have 72 of your hours to transmit your formal surrender. Choose wisely. The hegemony brings order. In her cramped office aboard Earth's hastily constructed orbital defense platform, Captain Maria Rodriguez read the message for the 5th time. Something felt fundamentally wrong about the entire situation, but she couldn't quite put her finger on it. Around her, the United Earth Response Team, assembled from military leaders, diplomats, and scientists from across the globe, buzzed with frantic activity. What exactly are they asking for? Rodriguez muttered, running her hands through her graying hair. Dr. Samuel Okonkwo, Nigeria's leading synopsychologist, looked up from his tablet. They want our surrender, Captain. Complete military capitulation and integration into their empire. Rodriguez frowned. Yes, but how? I mean, practically speaking, how does one surrender a planet? Do we have protocols for this? Forms to fill out? A flag to lower somewhere? The question hung in the air like smoke after an explosion. General Mikhail Volkov from the Russian Federation suddenly stopped mid-stride. Ambassador Chen Wei from China lowered her communicator. Dr. Sarah Mitchell from the European Science Collective blinked in confusion. Come to think of it, Mitchell said slowly, in all of human history, we've never actually surrendered as a species. Nations surrender, armies surrender, but humanity as a whole. Rodriguez pulled up Earth's military databases on her screen. I'm searching for planetary surrender protocols and getting nothing. Absolutely nothing. We have detailed procedures for everything from nuclear launch sequences to cafeteria food safety, but not a single document on how to surrender Earth. Perhaps we could adapt existing frameworks, suggested Ambassador Chen. The Geneva Conventions, maybe. Those cover treatment of prisoners and occupied territories, Volkov pointed out. Not the surrender of an entire species, Besides, would alien overlords even recognize the Geneva Conventions? Dr. Okonkwo raised his hand tentatively. If I may, has anyone considered that we might be overthinking this? Perhaps we simply transmit, "We surrender," and see what happens. The room fell silent as everyone contemplated this suggestion. Rodriguez was the first to speak. "That's just it, Doctor. We surrender. Who is we? The United Nations, Earth's combined military forces. Every single human being. Do we need unanimous consent from 7 billion people? A majority vote? And surrender to what terms, exactly? They mention protected member species status, but what does that entail? Tax rates, cultural preservation rights, religious freedom guarantees." The more they discussed it, the more complex the simple act of surrender became. Earth's response to the hegemony ultimatum was not defiance born of courage or foolishness. It was confusion born of bureaucratic impossibility. While Earth's leaders debated the mechanics of planetary capitulation, the planet itself erupted in typical human fashion. Within hours of the hegemony's message, Earth's communication networks blazed with activity. Governments issued conflicting statements. Military forces went to high alert, while simultaneously being ordered to stand down by different authorities. Scientists frantically tried to establish communication with the alien fleet, while conspiracy theorists claimed the whole thing was an elaborate hoax. The Internet, humanity's great digital nervous system, responded with characteristic chaos. Memes proliferated faster than government censors could suppress them. #Alien surrender became the top trending topic on social media, spawning everything from surrender instruction videos, how to surrender your planet in 10 easy steps, to tongue-in-cheek resistance movements, humans for hugging it out. Religious leaders offered wildly different interpretations of the event. Some proclaimed it the end times, others a test of faith, and still others an opportunity for cosmic enlightenment. New cults formed and dissolved within hours. Street preachers competed with food trucks for the attention of crowds gathered to watch the sky for signs of the alien fleet. Meanwhile, Earth's formal response to the hegemony was nothing. Not defiance, not acceptance, just an endless stream of clarification requests, committee formations, and bureaucratic delays. The United Nations convened an emergency session that immediately devolved into procedural arguments about voting rights in matters of planetary surrender. Individual nations began sending their own messages to the hegemony, each contradicting the others. Aboard the Dominion's Pride, Commander Vexter's crystalline form flickered with increasing agitation. In his extensive career, he had encountered defiant species who fought to the last, and wise species who surrendered immediately. But never had he encountered a species that simply didn't respond coherently. "Status report," he commanded, his harmonics betraying unusual stress patterns. Intelligence Officer Thumag's bioluminescent panels dimmed in confusion. "Commander, we're receiving everything and nothing." The humans appeared to be in the process of forming 347 different committees to discuss surrender procedures. "We're monitoring 15,000 separate communication channels, each claiming to speak for Earth. Their internet is producing surrender documentation at a rate of 10,000 documents per hour, but none appear to be official. Also," Thumag paused, unsure how to continue. "Speak," Vextor ordered. "They're selling merchandise, Commander. T-shirts reading, 'I survived the Alien Invasion Committee meeting,' and coffee mugs with our ultimatum printed on them. Is this normal for a species facing conquest?" Vextor's form pulsed erratically. In 3 centuries of conquest, he had never encountered anything remotely resembling this response. Where was the fear, the desperation, the rational acceptance of overwhelming odds? Have they gone insane? He wondered aloud. Cultural analyst Bertak floated forward, her gaseous form swirling with embarrassment. "Commander, I've been studying their historical records. It appears humans have no established protocol for species-wide surrender. They've been surrendering to each other in localized conflicts for millennia, but they've never developed a framework for planetary capitulation. That's impossible, Vextor replied. Every spacefaring species understands the concept of surrender to superior force. It's a fundamental aspect of survivability. Not for humans, apparently, Britak continued. Their history shows a peculiar trait. They fragment authority in crisis. Instead of unified capitulation, they generate dozens, sometimes hundreds of competing responses. It's not defiance in the traditional sense. They simply don't know how to surrender as a species. The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. The hegemony's entire conquest protocol relied on the assumption that rational beings, faced with overwhelming force, would choose survival through surrender. But what if a species literally couldn't conceptualize unified capitulation? Back on Earth, the United Earth Response Team had finally managed to craft what they considered a coherent response to the hegemony. It was a 500-page document that included requests for clarification on 2,847 specific points of the surrender terms, a proposed 50-year transition period with quarterly review sessions, detailed questions about cultural preservation, religious freedom, and internet access under hegemony rule. Amendments suggested by 37 different special interest groups. A requirement for environmental impact assessments of hegemony technology. Extensive footnotes debating the philosophical implications of species-wide surrender. Captain Rodriguez stared at the final document with a mixture of pride and horror. This is either the most comprehensive surrender document in galactic history or the most effective delay tactic ever devised. Dr. Mitchell laughed nervously. Knowing humanity, it's probably both. Do you think they'll accept our request for a constitutional convention to establish proper planetary surrender protocols? Before Rodriguez could answer, alarms blared across the station. The hegemony fleet was moving. On the bridge of the Dominion's Pride, Commander Vextor had reached the limits of his patience. Broadcast the secondary message. Target. What's that large, uninhabited landmass? They call it Antarctica, Commander, Thumag replied. Perfect. Demonstrate our precision. One glacier, vaporized. That should clarify the situation. The beam that struck Antarctica was visible from orbit, where once stood a towering ice formation. Now only steam and molten rock remained. The demonstration was surgical, precise, and utterly terrifying in its implications. Yet humanity's response continued to confound the hegemony. Instead of the expected panic and immediate surrender, Earth's communication channels exploded with new activity. Environmental groups filed protests about penguin displacement. Climate scientists began calculating the impact on global sea levels. Insurance companies started processing claims for acts of alien intervention. The tourism industry quickly advertised trips to see the alien blast site. Conspiracy theorists claimed the whole thing was staged in a Hollywood studio. The formal governmental response was even more bewildering. 17 different Earth organizations transmitted 17 different replies. We condemn this unprovoked attack on Earth's pristine environment. While we appreciate the demonstration of your capabilities, the unauthorized modification of Antarctica requires environmental remediation. We're forming a joint committee to study your propulsion technology. Would you be interested in a cultural exchange program? Vextor's crystalline form fractured slightly, a sign of extreme stress among his species. Are they insane? We just vaporized a portion of their planet. Psychological analyst Cordon ventured an explanation. Commander, I believe we're witnessing something unprecedented. Humans appear to process existential threats through fragmentation rather than unification. Each subset of their society interprets our presence through their own contextual framework. They're not refusing to surrender. They're physically incapable of surrendering as a unified species. That's ridiculous, Vextor snapped, his harmonics discordant. Every species we've encountered has had survival instincts that override cultural fragmentation when faced with extinction. Perhaps, Cordon suggested carefully, human survival instincts manifest differently. Their history shows they become more creative and adaptive when cornered, not more compliant. They survived on a death world not through unified submission to threats, but through chaotic, multifaceted responses that confused and outlasted their predators. The bridge fell silent as this sank in. Had the hegemony, in all its millennia of conquest, finally encountered a species that couldn't be conquered through traditional means, not because they were too strong or too advanced, but because they were simply too disorganized to surrender properly. As the 72-hour deadline approached, Earth's response to the hegemony had evolved into something unprecedented in galactic history. No single entity had attempted to surrender. Instead, various human organizations had formed the Galactic Integration Treaty Organization, GITO, with membership pending hegemony approval, established 37 different alien welcome centers across the globe, created competing Earth surrender protocols ranging from 2 pages to 12,000 pages, filed numerous lawsuits in Earth courts challenging the authority of any group to surrender the planet, started construction on a surrender monument in Switzerland, design still under debate, begun teaching galactic citizenship courses at major universities. The hegemony, meanwhile, found itself in an impossible position. Their entire military doctrine, refined over millennia, assumed that overwhelming force would produce one of 2 outcomes: surrender or resistance. Humanity had somehow found a third option: bureaucratic chaos. Commander Vextor stared at the latest batch of transmissions from Earth. One message from something called the International Coffee Growers Association requested clarification on whether Earth coffee would be considered a controlled substance under hegemony law. "They don't know how to surrender," he said finally, his voice carrying harmonics of wonder and frustration. "They literally do not know how to surrender as a species." His command staff exchanged uncertain glances. This was uncharted territory. The Hegemony Codex had protocols for dealing with defiant species, primitive species, even extinct species, but there was nothing about species who responded to invasion with paperwork and committee formation. "Commander," ventured strategic analyst Gemrose, "perhaps we need to reconsider our approach. Traditional conquest assumes a hierarchical species structure. Humans appear to operate more like a controlled chaos. Multiple leadership nodes, overlapping authorities, competing ideologies all functioning simultaneously." Vextor's form brightened as understanding dawned. "They're not a unified species in the traditional sense. They're more like a complex organism made of independent cells, each responding to stimuli in its own way." "Precisely," Gemrose confirmed. "And that may explain their technological advancement despite their apparent dysfunction. They don't solve problems through unified action, but through multiple, parallel, often competing solutions." The implications were staggering. How could the hegemony conquer a species that couldn't conceptualize unified surrender? How could they integrate a civilization that fragmented into thousands of competing responses to any external pressure? As the deadline passed, Earth continued its chaotic dance of non-compliance. The planet hadn't surrendered, but it hadn't exactly resisted either. It had done something far more confusing. It had bureaucratized the invasion. Somewhere in the depths of space, the most powerful military force in the galaxy found itself locked in a battle it hadn't prepared for, a war of forms, committees, and clarification requests. And for the first time in its history, the stellar hegemony began to wonder if it had encountered something more challenging than a warrior species, a species that had never learned how to surrender, not out of pride or courage, but simply because they couldn't agree on how to do it. The unbreakable species. 3 weeks after the initial ultimatum, the stellar hegemony found itself in an unprecedented situation. Commander Vextor's crystalline form had developed stress fractures visible to the naked eye, while his command staff moved about the bridge with the uncertain gait of beings who had lost their fundamental understanding of the universe. Earth, the small blue-green world that should have been integrated into the hegemony within days, continued its maddening dance of bureaucratic noncompliance. The planet's communication networks blazed with activity, yet no coherent response emerged from the chaos. Status report. Vextor commanded, his harmonics strained. Intelligence Officer Thumag's bioluminescent panels flickered with exhaustion. Commander, we've received 18,000 separate documents from various Earth organizations. They include surrender offers from 347 groups claiming governmental authority, trade proposals from 2,000 corporations, and cultural exchange requests from 50,000 educational institutions. Also, Thumag paused, her colors shifting to confused patterns. Continue, Vextor ordered wearily. The humans have created a reality entertainment program about our invasion. It's called Earth's God Invaders and features various groups competing to create the best surrender ceremony. Current viewership, 2.8 billion. Vextor's form dimmed. In his centuries of service, he had broken the will of warrior species that fought with antimatter weapons and quantum shields. Yet these humans, with their primitive nuclear arsenals and fragmented command structure, were accomplishing what no advanced civilization had managed. They were exhausting the hegemony through sheer organizational chaos. On Earth, Dr. James Chen sat in his cluttered office at the University of Tokyo, surrounded by holographic displays showing hegemony fleet movements. As Earth's leading xenopsychologist, a field that had existed for exactly 3 weeks, he had been tasked with understanding the alien mindset. They're frustrated, Chen explained to General Patricia Williams via secure connection. The hegemony operates on a fundamental assumption that survival instincts create hierarchical responses to threats. Williams, commanding officer of the United Nations Emergency Response Force, rubbed her temples. So what you're saying is that our complete inability to organize a coherent surrender is actually our strongest defense. Precisely, Chen confirmed. Every species they've encountered has had a clear command structure that could execute a planetary surrender. We don't. Our response to their threat has been to fractalize into thousands of competing authorities, each with their own interpretation of what surrender means. Williams laughed, a sound devoid of humor. We're not defeating them with advanced weapons or brilliant strategy. We're defeating them with bureaucracy. Not defeating, Chen corrected. Confusing. The hegemony doesn't know how to proceed. Their entire doctrine assumes rational actors making optimal survival choices. But human rationality includes factors they haven't considered: cultural identity, ideological stubbornness, and our peculiar tendency to create more leadership structures in response to crisis rather than consolidating them. Meanwhile, across Earth, humanity's resistance to the hegemony took forms that defied military classification. In New York, street artists created massive murals depicting various interpretations of peaceful coexistence with the invaders. In Mumbai, Bollywood produced 15 different movies about the invasion, each with wildly different endings. In Sao Paulo, entrepreneurs sold authentic alien invasion experience packages to tourists. The formal governmental responses were equally varied. The European Union proposed a 500-year integration timeline with biannual review processes. The African Union suggested a cultural exchange program as a precursor to any surrender discussions. The Pacific Islands Forum requested environmental impact studies of hegemony technology before considering capitulation. Most bewildering to the hegemony was the emergence of pro-invasion human groups. The Galactic Integration Now movement had gained millions of followers who actively petitioned for immediate surrender, but even they couldn't agree on the terms. Splinter groups formed daily, each with slightly different visions of humanity's galactic future. Aboard the Dominion's Pride, strategic analyst Jem Rose presented her latest findings to the increasingly desperate command staff. Commander, I've completed a comprehensive analysis of human response patterns. The results are disturbing. Vextor gestured for her to continue, his form flickering with anxiety. Humans don't just lack a planetary surrender protocol, Jem Rose explained. They lack the psychological framework for species-wide capitulation. Their evolution on a death world created a survival strategy based on diversification of responses rather than unification. When threatened, they instinctively fragment into competing solutions rather than consolidating behind a single response. But that's evolutionary suicide, protested navigation specialist Zeklon. A species that can't unite against existential threats should have gone extinct. That's what's remarkable, Gemrose continued. This fragmentation is their survival mechanism. By generating hundreds of different responses to threats, they ensure that at least some approaches will succeed. It's inefficient, chaotic, and energy-intensive, but it's also incredibly resilient. We can't decapitate their leadership because they have thousands of competing leaders. We can't break their will because they have millions of different wills. The implications hung in the air like a toxic cloud. The hegemony's greatest weapon, overwhelming force that compelled rational surrender, was useless against a species that responded to existential threats with bureaucratic multiplication. Should we simply destroy them? Asked weapons specialist Gorthak, his martial plates rattling with frustration. Vexter's form flared with negation. The hegemony does not commit genocide. We integrate, we don't obliterate. Besides, he paused, considering the unthinkable. I'm beginning to suspect that even faced with planetary destruction, they would respond with environmental impact assessments and memorial planning committees. The sad truth was that Vextor was right. Contingency plans discovered in Earth's military networks revealed humanity's response to potential planetary annihilation. 37 different survival protocols, none of which involved surrender. They ranged from generation ships to underground bunkers to something called Project Phoenix, which seemed to involve preserving human DNA in artificial satellites. Even extinction, it seemed, would be met with competing committee responses. Dr. Chen's research had led him to a startling conclusion. In a secure bunker beneath Geneva, he presented his findings to the United Nations Security Council. The hegemony's confusion isn't just about our inability to surrender, he explained. It's about what our response reveals about their own limitations. Every species they've conquered has shared one trait: hierarchical decision-making under pressure. They've never encountered a truly hierarchical species before. Hierarchical? Questioned the Secretary General. Multiple, overlapping, competing authority structures that function simultaneously, Chen clarified. Most species evolve either as hive minds with central control or as hierarchical societies with clear chains of command. Humans evolved something different, a chaos-tolerant system where authority is constantly negotiated, contested, and redistributed. The Russian ambassador leaned forward. You're saying our dysfunction is actually an evolutionary advantage against the hegemony? Absolutely. Their entire military doctrine assumes they're dealing with rational hierarchies. But we're not a hierarchy. We're a network. Cut one node, and dozens more activate. Pressure one point, and the load redistributes across thousands of others. As Chen spoke, reports flooded in from across the globe. The surrender process had spawned entire new industries. Law firms specialized in galactic integration law. Universities offered degrees in xenopolitical studies. The stock market had created an alien trade index. Most significantly, humanity had begun reverse engineering captured hegemony communications, not their technology, their psychology. We're learning how they think, Chen continued. And what we're finding is fascinating. The hegemony isn't just a military alliance, it's a psychological monoculture. Every species they've integrated shares similar hierarchical responses to threats. They've created an echo chamber of conquest, where their methods work because they only encounter species whose psychology makes those methods effective. The Chinese representative raised an eyebrow. And we're the exception. We're the black swan, Chen confirmed. The unencounterable scenario their system never prepared for. A species that responds to ultimatums with user agreements, to threats with liability waivers, to invasion with tourism industries. Operation Persistence began not with military fanfare, but with typical human improvisation. Instead of a centralized response, thousands of independent groups launched their own initiatives. Hackers attempted to infiltrate hegemony systems. Linguists worked to decode their complete language. Psychologists analyzed their behavior patterns. Even pizza delivery companies drew up plans to offer invader special meals to hegemony troops. The military response was equally fragmented but surprisingly effective. No single command structure emerged, but dozens of regional alliances formed, dissolved, and reformed in response to hegemony movements. Guerrilla tactics evolved independently across the globe, sharing characteristics not through central planning, but through parallel evolution of effective strategies. Most importantly, humans began doing what they did best, adapting and innovating in unpredictable ways. The hegemony's advanced technology, meant to inspire awe and submission, instead sparked curiosity and creativity. Within weeks, Earth's scientists had theories about their propulsion systems, artists had incorporated their aesthetic into new movements, and entrepreneurs were planning how to market Earth products to galactic consumers. After 6 weeks of mounting frustration, the hegemony tried a new approach. Ambassador Thexil, a rare diplomatic specialist from a recently integrated species, requested permission to visit Earth's surface. The meeting took place in the United Nations building in New York, though the choice of venue had required 17 committee meetings and 3 votes. Thexil, a graceful being resembling a giant praying mantis made of living crystal, faced a room containing representatives from every major Earth organization, 847 people in total, each claiming some authority to negotiate. "I come seeking understanding," Thexil began, her translator rendering her clicks and whistles into multiple Earth languages simultaneously. "In my 300 cycles of service, I have facilitated the integration of 12 species. Never have I encountered this." "This," prompted Dr. Chen, serving as primary liaison. "This beautiful chaos," Thexil clarified. "Your species responds to our arrival, not with unity, but with multiplication. Each threat generates new authorities, new responses, new interpretations. How do you function?" Chen smiled. "We don't, by your standards. We muddle through. We argue. We create competing solutions and see what works. It's inefficient, frustrating, and often contradictory. It's also unstoppable. But surely you must see the logic of joining the hegemony," Thexil continued. "Access to advanced technology, participation in galactic culture, protection from cosmic threats." "We see the logic," Chen agreed. "We just can't agree on what that logic means. Ask 100 humans about joining the hegemony, and you'll get 100 different answers. Some will want immediate integration, others will demand independence, and most will want something in between. And they'll all form committees to promote their views." Thexil's crystalline form shifted colors, a sign of deep thought. "My own species, the Vectari, surrendered to the hegemony in 3 days. We saw the logic of integration and accepted it unanimously. But you fragment instead of unifying. How did such a species achieve spaceflight?" "The same way we're responding to your invasion," Chen replied. "Through parallel competition. We didn't have one space program. We had dozens. National programs, private companies, eccentric billionaires, even crowd-funded projects. Most failed. Some succeeded. The survivors shared knowledge, competed for resources, and somehow stumbled into space." As they spoke, notifications flooded Thexil's communication array. Earth's internet had discovered her visit, and millions of humans were attempting to contact her directly. Messages ranged from dinner invitations to business proposals to requests for selfies. The sheer volume of uncoordinated human interaction threatened to overload her systems. "This is madness," Thexil muttered. "This is humanity," Chen corrected. "We don't have a hive mind or a supreme leader or even a coherent decision-making process. We have 8 billion individuals loosely organized into overlapping groups, all pursuing their own interpretations of reality." Over the following days, Thexil toured Earth, trying to understand human psychology. She visited bustling markets in Delhi where vendors sold authentic alien crystals, actually broken glass. She observed protest groups in London demanding immediate surrender alongside other groups demanding eternal resistance. She watched children in Tokyo playing humans and aliens, a game where the rules changed constantly and no one ever actually won. Slowly, a profound realization dawned on her. Humanity's chaos wasn't a weakness to be overcome, it was their fundamental nature. They had evolved not despite their inability to unify, but because of it. Her report to Commander Vextor was unlike any integration assessment in hegemony history. "Commander, I've spent 7 Earth days among the humans, and I've reached a startling conclusion. We cannot integrate humanity using traditional methods because humanity isn't a traditional species. There's something unprecedented in galactic history. A successful technological civilization that achieved advancement through competitive chaos rather than unified purpose." Vextor's form flickered with skepticism. "That's impossible. No species can reach the stars without coordinated effort. That's what makes humanity remarkable," Vexil continued. "They reached space not through unity but through competition. Multiple nations, private entities, even individuals pursuing parallel goals. Their inefficiency is offset by their resilience. Where unified species have single points of failure, humanity has thousands of backup systems, most of which they don't even realize exist." "Are you suggesting we abandon the integration?" Vextor asked, his harmonics conveying deep uncertainty. "I'm suggesting we consider an unprecedented solution," Thexil replied. "The hegemony has always expanded by integrating hierarchical species into our own hierarchy. But humanity offers something different. A chance to add not just another member species, but an entirely new organizational paradigm." The bridge fell silent as the radical nature of this proposal sank in. The hegemony, stable for millennia, built on principles of order and rational hierarchy, confronted with the possibility of voluntarily introducing chaos into its structure. Back on Earth, something unexpected was happening. The initial panic over invasion had evolved into a peculiar form of adaptation. Humans hadn't surrendered, but they hadn't exactly resisted either. Instead, they had begun integrating the reality of alien contact into their daily lives, with characteristic human adaptability. Stock markets created alien-adjusted indices. Insurance companies offered extraterrestrial event coverage. Dating apps added willing-to-date aliens preference options. The initial existential threat had been absorbed into human culture, processed, commodified, and normalized. Most remarkably, human creativity had exploded. Artists incorporated hegemony aesthetics into new works. Musicians created galactic fusion genres. Writers produced thousands of stories imagining different futures with alien contact. The threat of conquest had somehow become a catalyst for cultural renaissance. Dr. Chen observed this transformation with professional fascination. "We're watching human psychology in action," he explained to his colleagues. "Faced with an insurmountable threat, we don't unify it or surrender. We adapt it into our worldview and continue functioning. The hegemony represents the greatest change in human history, and we're responding by making it ordinary." Military strategists had reached similar conclusions. General Williams reported to the UN Security Council, "Traditional invasion assumes the conquered population will either submit or resist. Humans are doing neither. We're integrating the invasion into our existing chaos. The hegemony doesn't know how to respond to a species that treats existential threats as inconveniences to work around." 2 months after first contact, Ambassador Thexil presented a radical proposal to both the Hegemony Command and Earth's scattered leadership. The meeting, held via quantum communication to include thousands of Earth representatives and the entire Hegemony Command structure, marked a pivotal moment in galactic history. "I propose a new classification," Thexil began. "Humanity represents not a species to be integrated, but a phenomenon to be studied and partnered with. They have achieved something thought impossible. technological advancement through organized chaos. Their resistance to integration isn't defiance, it's incompatibility with our fundamental concepts of organization. Murmurs rippled through both audiences. On Earth, committees immediately formed to discuss the implications. Aboard hegemony vessels, crystalline forms flickered with unprecedented uncertainty. Vexil continued, "I propose we offer humanity something never before extended, partnership without integration." They maintain their chaotic independence while engaging with the hegemony as equals. In return, we gain access to their unique problem-solving paradigm. This is unprecedented, Vextor protested. The hegemony has functioned through integration for millennia. And in those millennia, Vexil countered, we've encountered only variations of our own organizational psychology. Humanity offers something genuinely new, a successful model of advancement through competitive chaos. They solve problems not through unified action, but through thousands of parallel attempts. Where we see inefficiency, they create resilience. On Earth, the response to this proposal was predictably chaotic. Some groups immediately accepted, others rejected it outright, and hundreds created modified versions. Within hours,